Hi everyone, my name is Alina Dima and I'm a senior developer advocate for AWS IoT. If you are watching this video, hopefully you have also seen part 1, but this video series is about coding an IoT application using Amazon CodeWhisperer as an AI coding companion. So this video is part 2 of the series. So for those who have not watched part 1 yet, but I would advise you to watch part 1 afterwards if you haven't seen it yet. In part 1, we coded the CDK stack for this IoT application that we're building. So what we did is first we got started with CodeWhisperer. We configured it, we connected it using the AWS Builder ID, and then we started using it in order to build our CDK. So we set up an IoT device policy, we set up an IoT rule, and we created a Lambda function action using CDK. And then we deployed the resources in the AWS account. If you would like to have access to the code, you can scan the QR code or you can navigate to the URL below. So what are we going to do in this video? So in this video, we are going to be writing the actual application code. So as a first step, we will verify that the AWS resources created in the previous video look okay. And if they don't look okay, we're going to fix them. Then we're going to write the application code to create the IoT thing and create the unique identity, meaning the certificate and the key pair. We are, of course, going to associate the policy we created previously with the certificate, and we are going to attach the certificate to the thing. Of course, we're going to connect the AWS IoT thing to AWS IoT Core Broker, and we're going to start publishing some data. For this, we're going to be using MQTT.js, which is an open source Node.js client library for MQTT. And for sure, we're going to be testing it all end to end. So let's get started. So as I was saying earlier, the first thing we're going to do is figure out whether the resources we tried to create in the first video are correct. So let's have a look. The first thing that we created was the IoT policy. So let's see. Okay, so policies. So our IoT policy was the playground stack IoT policy. So looking here, we can immediately see that something is not quite right. So this here, the first one, is correct. So we want to allow a connection from IoT thing name. So this is a variable allowed by AWS IoT to be placed in the policy. But, however, we don't want connections on the subtopic. We don't want connections on the pub topic. So this is something that apparently we are going to need to revisit and fix. In order to fix the problem that we have seen before regarding our IoT policy, we need to go back to our CDK, our CDK stack. So we can already see here that we are passing an array of actions and an array of resources. So this means that for every action, it's going to give permissions on the entire list of resources. So this is what is not okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of some of this stuff, right? So let's cut this out. And now, hopefully, CodeWhisperer is going to help us generate some more of the permissions. So it's now generating the subscribe. This is what we don't want. We don't want them put together, because if we have them put together, what's going to happen is we're going to have the same problem. All right. And now let's see the resource for subscribe. Right, so the resource for subscribe with topic filter, and this is correct. So now we're going to go further, and ideally it would support us to create the publish. IoT publish, right. And the resource for the publish, which is topic and our publish topic. So this looks quite good. So let's move on. Here is an extra space. Right, so this is correct. Now we need the last permission, which is IoT receive. And this should be here, the subscribe topic. Because we're not sending stuff from the cloud, we probably don't need this at the moment. We're not going to look at it, but let's put it in there just for the purpose of completeness. Right, so topic filter for subscribe, and the rest of the things. So this actually looks good at the moment. So we notice here that we have still an array, which means that we can fill it in with some more resources if we choose to do so. So right now, with these changes that we have just made, this should fix our issue in the IoT policy. So I have already ran the CDK deploy, and as you can see here, everything was successful. So the connection was modified, the IoT connect was modified, the publish was modified, and so on. So everything looks good. And now it's time to look again in our IoT account. So we see that we already have version 2 active, and we see that the policy is actually looking quite good this time. The next step is to have a look at the rule as well. So this is our playground stack IoT rule that we created in the previous video. So we see that it is subscribing, that it is, getting the messages from devices my IoT thing /pub, and it is invoking a Lambda function. So this looks quite good. If we look here, we can scroll straight into the Lambda function, and we can have a look to see if the Lambda function was created successfully. So this looks just like our inline code, and we have the index.js that we created yesterday. So this all looks actually quite okay. So the next thing is to actually start creating our IoT application. So in our playground, let's just make a new folder. And let's call it test app. So the first thing we're going to need here is a package.json file. Let's create it. So let's give this a name. We can call it my IoT application. And let's go for some dependencies. So we know that we're going to be using the AWS IoT client from the AWS SDK. So we import the client IoT, and we just get the latest version because this is easier. And we also know that we are actually interested in the MQTT library. So let's get the MQTT client, and let's get this version. We also know that we want to be using imports. So let's go ahead and add the type module. And it would be a good idea to give this a version as well. So let's say version 1.0.0. So this is already suggesting that we run npm install, so we can actually do that. So now the npm install is complete. So now let's create our little application. We're going to do this in the fastest way possible. So the first thing we're going to do is tell our CodeWhisperer companion to create an IoT thing. So it does not seem like it actually, well, this looks close to what we wanted to do, but we wanted to create a function, right? So it does not really seem to be getting there. Perhaps what would help it is if we already import the IoT client. Seems like it already knows this. So let's see. Okay, so this is looking better. So we will take this. So let's see what it is suggesting. So parameter string name. Yeah, so this looks good. So let's take it. So it looks like the create thing command is not imported. So let's do this. Right, so this is our function to create an IoT thing. So now it is suggesting that we build a run function. Okay, let's do this. For now, let's leave our run function as it is. The next step is to create a new certificate and key. But we also want to activate certificate. Let's see. This is not what we want. So this is looking quite okay. No, this is not the correct function. Let's see if we give it one more shot. Yeah, exactly. So this is actually looking a little better. Yeah, exactly. So let's just get rid of this login statement, and let's also get rid of this code here because we don't need it. And the same would go here. This is all nice, but we don't need this. The next step is to attach the policy to the certificate. So let's see. Yes, this looks okay. Yeah, let's go for this and see how it goes. So one thing that we need to validate here is we need to verify that the target is indeed a certificate ID. So let's have a look in the client. So the identity to which the certificate is attached. So I believe that this identity actually needs to be a certificate ARN. So this is a certificate ARN and not a certificate ID. All right. The next thing we will do is attach the thing to the certificate. Actually attach the certificate to the thing, and this is already correct here. So let's see. Right, so this is looking good. Yes, exactly. So this all looks correct. So now the next step is to call all our functions, right? So create thing, create attach policy, actually create certificate and keys, attach policy, and attach certificate to thing. It's already suggesting all the right things, so let's see what it actually does. So we don't need to hard code the region here because it's going to take the region from the environment variables for now. On production, of course, you would actually pass the correct region correctly via configuration. So let's leave this like this for now. We can fix it later. We can fix all of this later. This actually is not correct. So it's already starting to not be correct. For now, let's take this and let's create them as constants because we're going to need them later. So this, let's call it my IoT thing. Now we need the name of the policy that we created, so we can actually copy this from the from the IoT console for now. So this is the policy name. So right now I want it to call create thing. This is okay. So now I want it to call create certificate and keys. So it looks like it's calling this. So this is okay. Keys and certificate. All right, so maybe we can be a little bit more explicit here. Let's see if it's going to help us. Certificate on and key pair. So this is looking okay. And the next step is then to attach the policy. Policy name and certificate ARN. And now we need to call attach certificate to thing. It's already suggesting this, so it's looking good. Right, so this is looking good. The only thing that I'm actually wondering is what this function really returns. So let's have a look at this and let's look at the output. I think that here CodeWhisperer would probably do a little better with TypeScript. So it seems like it's returning. We need certificate ARM, certificate PAM, and the key pair as well, right? So let's go back and have a look here. So let's fix this really quick. Right. So one thing that it would be nice to would be nice to do, especially for the purpose of this demo, is to store the certificate and the private key on the file system. So of course we would not be doing this on production, but this is just a test application. So once we are connecting, we are going to pass the location of the certificate and private key to the MQTT client option. So let's see if CodeWhisperer can help us here. So, okay, well, this is, let's say, fine, we're going to move this, but let's see if it's going to do, right, so this is actually okay, but we are not super happy with this. So what we're going to do is ask it to write a function to do this. Okay, so write to file. So here we are going to tell it to do this again. So this actually looks quite okay. Perhaps, well, this is actually okay. So now it is time to actually create our MQTT client and connect to AWS IoT Core. So the first thing we will do is import the MQTT. Right. And now let's go here. So we do need to actually run. So this is correct, but this returns a promise. So then let's see. We don't want to log done because we're not done yet. So connect to MQTT broker. This is interesting. So it's an interesting suggestion. However, I wanted to create the connection options first, right? So let's see if it's going to do this. Well, we're going to have to populate this ourselves a little later. Yeah, sure, but we will have to fix this. So this is already going a bit in the wrong direction, right? So here we can fix this already. So this is going to be thing name. We are not going to be using MQTT because we need TLS. So we will be using MQTT-S. So this looks good. Port was also wrong. And now what we need is the key and certificate. So what we need here is the cert. So we need to read this. So let's find our certificate file. So this is going to be cert.pam. We will extract all this into constants later. Now we just need the key. So we can just copy this. Private.pam. So let's try and get the reconnect period. So we don't want reject authorize. So let's do reconnect period 0. And let's try to see if we can enable trace as well. Let's leave it false for now, but if we need it because something doesn't work, this is going to help us. So here we need to verify what our IoT endpoint is. For now, we can hard code it in here. We can just copy it from our AWS account and put it in. Of course, it would make sense to actually do a describe endpoint. For the purpose of this demo, we will go for the simplest thing possible. So now that we have the options, we can tell it to create the MQTT client. So the next thing we will do is connect MQTT client to the broker. So we've got a connection here. Let's insert this for now. So we'll all connect it and then we should subscribe. Now, ideally, what we would do here, so first let's finish this because it looks like it's complaining. So let's copy our topics because we are going to need them and it's easier to copy them than rewrite them. So let's do this. So we will need to subscribe. So on connect, we will subscribe to the subtopic. And it seems like here it wants to publish something, but let's not do this. Let's actually have a separate. Let's actually have a separate publish. So let's tell it to publish messages to topic, pub topic. Ideally on interval. So it's already suggesting the right thing, which is actually quite impressive. Yeah, I think 500 is okay. So this is every 5 seconds. So this is actually satisfactory. However, here, ideally, we would build a proper JSON object. So let's just go const message equals. Let's do something like hello world. And then here we need to put a string in. So we would go JSON stringify of message. All right. So we are not publishing anything right now. We will not be publishing anything right now from the cloud. So we don't need the listener for on message, but theoretically you could add a listener here for messages coming from the cloud. But what we do want is a catch block, because if something goes wrong, we actually want to log the error. So this looks quite okay, even if it's a little strangely formatted. But I believe that this is okay. So at this point, we are actually ready to run this application and see what is going on. So let's do this. Okay, so it seems like here something has gone wrong because this is actually not correct. So what we need to do to create the certificates is use the send command, right? So this here is not correct. So we need a create keys and certificate command. So this looks better. And it seems like it has actually not proposed this for most of the things we have done. So we just have to go back and actually fix this. Apologies. So we need to fix this in all the locations because it seems like it has not done it correctly. So this is nowadays done using the send commands, right? So here we need the command to attach policy. It seems like if you're helping it a little bit, it sort of gets there. But so this is looking good. All right, so let's see. So let's get this into the imports. So So it seems like the autocorrect completions are correct. So right now we fixed this in most places. So we've got a send. All right, so let's give this another go and see what happens. So here we go to the next error. Okay, so this has to do with the missing exports of the tokens that are needed. So I will do this real quick. So after I imported the keys and the needed tokens for the AWS credentials, it looks like this is actually working. But let's have a look. So ideally, what we would do is put a printout also. Actually, here it would be good to have a log every single time it's publishing. So thank you for suggesting this. This is actually quite nice. So let's stop this and let's start this again. So let's see. All right, so it's already starting to publish every 5 seconds. So I believe that this is actually working right now. So the next step is for us to go to the AWS account and validate that the Lambda function is being invoked and messages arrive and that the rule engine gets executed. So now let's look in the AWS account and see that if data is arriving or not. So the first thing we're going to do is navigate to the MQTT client and subscribe. Let's subscribe just to the filter topic and see. So our device is actually sending data right now. And we can see that the data is actually arriving. So if we have a look, in CloudWatch, oops, not CloudFormation, but CloudWatch, we should actually see that our Lambda function is executed. So let's have a look at the log groups and see which one it is. Let's see. So this looks like an old one. This also looks like an old one. So it seems like this is the correct one. Yeah, and here we can see that the Lambda function is being invoked on the rule engine execution. And we can, of course, look at one of these events and we can see that it's literally just printing what comes in. So this concludes our demo today. We have seen in 2 parts how to build an IoT application using the power of Amazon CodeWhisperer as a code companion. So we have seen how CodeWhisperer can help us with less typing, how it can help us with function generation, how it can help us with third-party code library integrations and code documentation for both JavaScript and TypeScript. Suffice it to say, we have also seen how at times we were struggling with CodeWhisperer. So this means that best practices for working with it are still emerging. However, this video series was relatively exploratory, so we looked at some techniques on how to use CodeWhisperer for a practical example of an IoT application. And I believe we illustrated how CodeWhisperer can enhance and speed up your programming workflow. Some reference material for you. So the first link is a link to the GitHub repository where the code is located. I've also pasted a link to Amazon CodeWhisperer so you can have a look at its documentation and user guide. And of course, here is also a link to part 1 of the video where we build the CDK resources for our IoT application. So make sure that you watch that as well so you are able to follow end to end. Thank you very much for your attention. My name is Alina Dima, and I'm a senior developer advocate for the AWS IoT service team. If you would like to get in touch with me, feel free to scan the QR code and we can talk on LinkedIn or Twitter. Thank you very much again and have a lovely rest of the day.